Before that, we had Ken Mijungu at the Parliament buildings, where he was listening in to what the two leaders of majority were saying. And this was exactly what you mentioned earlier, all about disassociating themselves from that petition filed by the Nyeri Member of Parliament.
Entirely, Mark. They've exactly done that, and they've said if it was at all the party's position, then they should have discussed it at the parliamentary group, which never happened. It neither emanated from the presidency or from any of their group meetings or from any of their forums. And Eden Duale is specific about this. If at all they needed to have such a discussion, they should have brought it to the floor of the House instead of taking it first to the judiciary. So in totality, they've said they're not part of it, and they've also mentioned that they are already speaking to Ngunjiri Wambugu, who is an independent mind, Mark. He has all the rights like any other Kenyan to petition the National Assembly, the Judicial Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, whoever, anyone in Kenya wants to petition, they can. However, the timing of this was very suspect, Mark. That's the reason why it's raised a lot of heat. And one of the things they're saying is that the reason why they needed to address this morning, Mark, is because yesterday there was a lot of questions that were being asked. There was a Bagusi member of parliament, here in Parliament making a statement and defending Maraga, and they even mentioned something that is impossible, that is being enjoined in the petition, which is impossible. But they did say that, all in the defense of one of their own. But let's talk about what they have said. One, they're saying that they're not part of it. They've spoken to Wambugu on phone, and Wambugu is currently meeting the president together with other leaders from that region in Nyeri at the Sagana State Lodge. After that, they'll try and engage with him further, Mark, to try and persuade him. But they're making that clear that it's upon him to decide to withdraw it or drop it or not. That's upon him. It's an individual decision. But currently what they're focusing on is the campaign. This to them is a subdivision. It's taking them away from the focus, which is campaigning for the re-election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. However, Kipchumba Murkomen, the majority leader at the Senate, says that he has gone through the petition and it raises major weighty matters that needs to be addressed. And a specific question that I asked to these members of Parliament, Mark, that they went around is the fact that consistently, right after the ruling, none in the name of the president and very senior members of the Jubilee government talked about the fact that the judiciary needs to be relooked at. In fact, in the words of the president, we will revisit that issue after the election on the 17th. He's not the only one. We have a couple of leaders who have spoken about it, but I picked also on Kipchumba Murkomen, who specifically tweeted about this and said that it will not be business as usual, and he's clarified that, and he said that you cannot give a judgment with such far-reaching effects and not give the reasons. What everyone is doing right now, Mark, is second-guessing that judgment and waiting for Tuesday to see what exactly is contained in that judgment. And already they're alluding to their fact that perhaps this was pre-planned by NASA and the judiciary. And when the ruling comes out on Tuesday, it will confirm to the Kenyans that indeed this was something that was pre-planned. And even the narrative that NASA is currently driving, that there shall be no election, they're saying this is something that is supposed to come out of this judgment, and it will validate their thoughts, Mark. So the other issue that I know, once Apollo Mboya gets to the studio, you'll be discussing the fact that they are bringing in the petition that was filed by Apollo Mboya against Lady Justice Njoki Ndung'u and Justice J.B. Ojwang, if I'm right. And this was about misconduct, about public service deciding not to go on duty in solidarity with other judges during the time there was some active cases in court. So that's a question that we wanted to ask, but they couldn't allow us to ask. But they brought Apollo Mboya in and associated Apollo's petition with this petition with Raila Odinga, and said, why didn't the media have so much attention during that time when NASA, because they are associating Apollo Mboya with NASA, with NASA's presidential candidate, and saying, even at that time, it did not raise so much pressure. Why is there so much information about this? Why is the media so much on this and associating with the president, with the deputy president, with the Jubilee government? Why didn't we see Apollo Mboya Mboya's petition being associated with the top leadership of NASA and CORD at that time. So that's a question that Apollo Mboya can answer. But the facts of that case was totally different from these facts, and they are not looking at that. Well, all they are looking at is that this is not the first time, Mark, that we are having a petition that is brought before the Judicial Service Commission to challenge any of the justices of the Supreme Court. So they are very specific on that, and they want attention shifted from this to the campaigns to re-elect President Uhuru Kenyatta, Mark.
Ken, you can still stand by with us and chime in as we conversate with Bwana Gabriel Muduma. He's in studio, political analyst. And as you mentioned, yes, we are expecting Apollo Mboya, who has featured in that address that went on earlier. And of course, you've mentioned something about diverting attention. And I'll put this to Muduma. Can you stand by with us? And you can also weigh in on the discussion. Muduma, I mean, this seems a lot like a diversionary tactic. Yes, they're calling on why don't we have the focus that was still on the Apollo Mboya petition, as is with the Ngunjiri petition. But the timing is suspect given what has been said by the leadership of Jubilee.
100%. I agree with you, Mark, when you say the timing is suspect. Indeed, it's quite suspect. And we are coming from a backdrop where, the president was saying we'll revisit this issue. But having said that, I think there's also something that we need to also respect. When you look at Ngunjiri's character, I mean, so many people who have been able to interact with him, he comes out as what you'd call a firebrand. He's always been a renegade. Remember, he's serving, his first time as an MP, as an elected leader for Nyeri town. And he's been known, I mean, his articles, when you read them, many people, disagree with what he writes, but he also has a serious panel of readers who actually write, like to read his articles. But one thing we cannot take away from this, and this is, what Ken Mijungu is reporting, is that everybody agrees that he has a constitutional right. And this actually is clearly demarcated by what Justice Maraga himself told us. He reminded Kenyans that they must demonstrate fidelity to our constitution. And so what Ngunjiri is doing, he's actually exercising and demonstrating his fidelity to the constitution. We've talked about several judges actually who have been removed out of their seats, based on what you'd call misconduct. Right. We have somebody like, Gladys Beauchelet. We have somebody like Nancy Baraza. We have somebody like Tonui. All those are hallmarks of people who are removed from office constitutionally, if I may add. And probably that's what I'd like to see if we are going to move forward with what we are talking about IEBC. And I think this is a constitution. It has to be a constitutional pathway that has been used, not to pigeonhole on the justice that Justice Maraga rendered.
Right. And Ken, even as much as they try to distance themselves or disassociate with this particular petition by Ngunjiri, there's attempts there and hints that they're going to talk him out of this particular petition to withdraw it, because it seems like it's egg and face for the Jubilee party.
Yes, Mark, indeed, they're going to try and persuade him, but they make it very clear that it's the prerogative of the individual who enjoys all the constitutional rights, like every Kenyan, despite the fact that he's a member of parliament, despite the fact that he's a Jubilee member of parliament, he enjoys all the constitutional rights. He can petition anyone he wants to petition or any institution. However, the dots that we were trying to connect, in fact, Aiden Dwale dismissed my question and said, it's you, Ken, who is connecting the dots. It's not us, but I want to give you the connection that we are having to this. And the reason why everyone believes that this could have come from the highest office in the land, which is the presidency. One, the president comes out and says he will revisit that issue. Secondly, we had numerous pronouncements, including the fact that they're saying that there could be sponsored motions before the National Assembly and the Senate to ensure that the judiciary does not do that. That was Kipchumba Murkomen's yesterday's statement at Senate, saying that he will sponsor a motion himself to ensure that this does not happen again, that the judiciary does not overturn the will of the people. Then we have also senior members of the Jubilee government mentioning this. We have tweets to this effect, people vilifying the judiciary, everyone speaking about it in public forums. Then suddenly, Mark, yesterday, Ngunjiri Wambugu drafts a very lengthy petition and presents it before the Judicial Service Commission. So, Mark, as much as they are distancing themselves from this petition as the Jubilee government, as the Jubilee parliamentary group, and putting it right at the foot of Ngunjiri Wambugu. It's not difficult to see the connection, but however, they're saying, and it's from them, that there is no connection. This is an individual who decided to petition, and again, they're saying it's upon this individual, we will talk to him, but if he deems it fit to remove it or to drop it from before the Parliament, before the Judicial Service Commission, well, it's okay, but they're saying this is not the end of it. However, at this particular time, Mark, what we want to focus on is the campaigns for the re-election of the president. So the Jubilee government is not saying that we forget about it entirely, but let us focus first right now in the campaigns. We can revisit this later, Mark.
Thank you, Ken. And Apollo Mboya has joined us as you were just recapping that. And you can still stand by as time allows you to. I'm sure you want to carry on, probably get one-on-ones there. But, and as Apollo Mboya has been whispering as you're talking, that there's, you featured greatly prominently in this particular discussion before you came at the presser from Duale's briefing, and as well as the Kipchumba Murkomen saying, why didn't we then associate or give so much attention to your petition against the judiciary earlier?
Thank you very much. I think we have to look at context. And I've decided to actually appear and even show my colleague here an affidavit by the then Chief Justice, William Tunga, on 2 judges. And I'm reading, and this is an affidavit that William Tunga has written, that despite receiving response from the Judicial Service Commission, he is aware that the 3 judges who signed the letter that they are going to withdraw their services to the Republic of Kenya, 2 of them acted upon their threat to down the tools. And they indeed downed their tools. And he confirmed further that in the affidavit that these judges also cooked minutes purporting to be the minutes of the meeting of the Supreme Court judges. It's in an affidavit. What we are dealing with here is a situation that is very different from the political angling that we are seeing right now.
Right. Let's put it into context as well as just revisit what this particular petition was about and the timing.
The petition was about 3 Supreme Court judges writing to the Judicial Service Commission that they are withdrawing their services. The term they used, that they have put a moratorium on all the judicial operations with immediate effect. Why were they doing this? They were doing this in solidarity with 2 judges, Justice Tunoi and Deputy Chief Justice Rawal, who had been informed by the Judicial Service Commission that their age of retirement had arrived and they need to vacate.
All right, I'll let you get to the details of it, but I'd want you to break it down in simple terms as to what this was about, when it was, and what you were aiming to get, because it's come up today in contrast to what is happening with the petition by Ngunjiri. And in the same wording during the presser, the Duale said that you are a close associate or confidant of Raila Odinga, hence your petition as well should have been questioned at the time that it was raised. Are you confident of Raila Odinga?
I don't know what a confidant is. What is a confidant? Do we share secrets, or what does it mean?
Are you a close associate, as they say Ngunjiri is a close associate to the higher echelons of Jubilee?
You see, I'm an advocate.
All right.
Yeah, that is the most important thing. Now, this association that is now being built is a narrative in order to fit within the narrative that Jubilee, the Jubilee context, wants it to be. We have to stick, because I'm an advocate, we have to stick to the real issue. The real issue was that Supreme Court, 3 judges of the Supreme Court downed their tools and withdrew their services to the public, to the litigating public. And the Chief Justice, in an affidavit, has confirmed that. So
in this particular instance, were you holding brief for Raila or the NASA leadership?
No.
All right.
We should understand that at the time that I did this, I was actually the Chief Executive Officer of the Law Society of Kenya. So, and I'm an advocate. Yes.
Right, and so let me bring in Ken Mijungu, if you're listening in to what Apollo Mbowe is saying, at least a right of reply to what was said earlier during the presser. And of course, he says that the association there in comparison to Ngunjiri was a bit off. You could draw the context as to what Duale and Murkomen was saying in this, to this end.
All right, Mark, before I even respond to that, one other thing they said that looks closely to what Apollo Mbowe is saying is that every time there is a call for action on a particular institution or individual, and I'll give their own example, that is Murkomen and Duale, is that then we need to look at this in entirety, in that if we are calling for the removal of the Chief Justice, then we need to call for the removal of the DCRJ. If you're calling for the removal of Wafula Chebukati, then we also call for the removal of DCJ Maraga. So what they were saying is that every time such a thing happens, in order to look at the rules of fairness, then you should look across the board, because right now they're saying that the NASA is not calling for the removal of the chairman, but Jubilee is calling for the removal of the CJ. So every time such a thing happens, you should look at two extreme individuals who perhaps add up to the equation and look at how to remove them. But I just want to weigh in what Apollo Mbowe is saying, because I covered this story and extensively we reported in that petition. We had a copy of the petition long before that. Mark, there was no association at that time between Apollo Mbowe that you could draw with the petition. And I don't hold brief for Apollo Mbowe, but because I reported, I'm talking about the story that we put on air. It was basically about the three judges who decided to withdraw their labor because they were in solidarity with Justice Philip Tunoy and Kalpana Rawal at that time, who were supposed to retire, as Apollo explains it. So in public service, and if you're holding the entrusted position of a judge, you cannot withdraw labor. That's why when they termed this as a moratorium, it raised eyebrows. And when it was taken before the Judicial Service Commission, the question, if you look deeply into the petition, and Apologies, I can clarify, the question was, can judges of the caliber of the Supreme Court judges withdraw service, and especially in solidarity with their colleagues who are supposed to retire? And remember at that time also, Justice Tunoy was already before the tribunal being investigated for allegedly receiving a 200 million bribe. So Mark, totally in relation to the current petition, which is the removal, and it's clear, is for the removal of the CJ due to his misconduct in the manner in which he handled, and together with other judges, they handled the Supreme Court case that came before them, that is Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka versus the IBC, the chair, and the third respondent, who was Uhuru Kenyatta. So he's basically questioning the removal, questioning the conduct of the Chief Justice in relation to how they conducted the presidential election. And the other one was basically questioning why judges of the Supreme Court can withdraw labor, and if civil servants or public servants with in the caliber of the justices of the Supreme Court can indeed withdraw their labor. Mark, that was the difference between these two petitions.
So definitely a lot of politicking there, throwing in Apollo Mbowe. You don't hold brief for him, neither do I. Thanks for clarifying that. I'll let you go, Ken Mijungu, and we continue with the conversation here with Gabriel Muduma, political analyst, and Apollo Mbowe, an advocate. Yes, you were drawing the context at the time of what your petition entailed then and what you wanted to achieve.
Thank you. And I think Ken Mijungu has summarized it even much clearer. Another aspect that Dr. William Mutunga says in the affidavit is that Justice Njoki Ndung'u then purported to come up with minutes, cooked minutes, and it's in the affidavit, whereby they trying to indicate that William Mutunga was also part of them who had agreed to withdraw the services. And William Mutunga is telling them that a judge does not take minutes.
Right.
In their conferencing, it is the chief registrar, whenever they meet, who takes minutes. And subsequently, in another meeting, those minutes that were actually taken by Njoki Ndung'u were dismissed.
Right.
By the judges of the Supreme Court.
And we'll continue to get the contents of that particular petition that was thrown in, but clearly that was politicking that was being brought in as they threw in that comparison.
Yeah, and then, you know, these are two different, if I may call it, two different scenarios altogether. We have one which was, looking at the conduct of these three judges. But I think the point that majority of people and majority of the voters want to see, and being pushed through a narrative of the people who hold or people who sit in the highest court in our land, is that they are not without blemish, if I may use that word. They can be investigated.
Yes.
And that is what we are seeing. In fact, that's why you had this petition.
Yes.
And that is why you have somebody like Wambugu Ngunjiri. What I'm probably pushing against is people saying that he should not be doing it.
No. Right.
We've had it very clearly, and Wakili can tell us that he has a constitutional right.
Yes.
He is actually covered by that particular constitution. Same way the Justice Maraga is also covered by what you would call an umbrella, whereby he cannot be subjected to a ruling where he made his judgment out of good faith. So, and that's why, if you look at our constitution, it creates a very hard stance, if I may say, to remove a sitting judge. Primarily because if you are going to do that, you must bring what we call tangible evidence.
Yes.
Such that it removes the space of me and you, Mark, running every time to the JSC to say this one did this, this one did this. That's why it is very hard for you to remove a sitting judge. And we have to understand that particular element very well. But having said that, there's also one thing that we must look at Wambugu himself. Like I told you, to me, he comes out as a renegade. Sorry to call him that. You remember him in civil society. His hardline stance, like in the ICC matter. That's the Wambugu we remember. So I do not look at him as somebody who would be given a line of thought by somebody, the top echelon, and told, you do this, you run. I mean, look at him when he was a political advisor for Raila Odinga. He was still a renegade back then as he is today. So sometimes when you have somebody who has an independent mind, it is good to allow him to run with it. At the end of the day, it strengthens our institutions.
You speak of an independent mind, but this echoes with sentiments that were relayed right after the Supreme Court ruling of revisiting some of the issues. Revisiting, and that is why it looks like egg and face for the Jubilee.
And that is the problem. That's why I'm saying the timing is very suspect. And, probably somebody looking from outside will say, hang on a minute. Is this what they were talking about revisiting? Is this why we are starting to see the chastisement of Justice Maraga? Could that be? We have to wait and see what comes out of the meeting in Sagana. But I would suspect it would be funny and almost a political foolishness if the president was to meet with the Abugusi, or the Omugusi nation, as I call it, last week, and then go to hit hard on, one, who has been perceived as being a true son of the Omugusi. It will be a little bit foolish. It won't be a good political move.
Wasn't that a charm offensive, especially right after the ruling, and how he came out with with a lot of fury?
And again, and
this
he's
is
making
a charm offensive.
Exactly, and he's making two comparisons. He's saying, hang on a minute, I am not against the man. I am against his judgment. And it seems to subvert the will of the people. That is what the president was saying, and we have to give him that.
You're giving it some diplomatic tones here. Apollo, this came up in that presser earlier, and Murkomen had tweeted, and he was questioned by Ken on September 9th, and he said, after this experience, this is a Supreme Court ruling, the Supreme Court judges will no longer have the simple luxury to overturn the people's will. Mark my words.
Yes.
So it's hard not to associate such moves and petitions to the party's will or in terms of intentions.
That is correct. And in fact, it was a very sad statement.
Let me hold you on that.